Welcome to this CPD video produced for Lifespan RdSAP users lodging with Sterling Accreditation. Since the introduction of RdSAP 10 earlier this year, we have been actively monitoring the common causes of audit failures. We have already issued updated guidance in the form of an example quality assurance audit submission which all assessors should have reviewed. At the current time we, like all schemes, are seeing a very high failure rate amongst assessments being called for audit. This is not sustainable and will have serious consequences for the assessors concerned if not addressed. In this video we will be reviewing some of the common issues causing failures and reviewing an example data file to specifically highlight some of the issues.
Evidence submissions.
EPCs are evidence-based assessments. The first requirement for quality assurance is that an auditor can recreate your entire assessment from the evidence submitted without referring to your data file. It is therefore essential that the evidence submitted is complete and covers all of the required inputs. Common issues being encountered include
insufficient photographs from site.
Assessors need to take a sufficient number of photographs to show all the key features of the property being assessed. Commonly missed photographs include heating controls, gas and electricity meters, wall thicknesses, insulation thicknesses, room-in-roof details, showers and baths.
Lack of context provided for the assessment.
It is not enough just to show what is present in a property. Just as you will have seen during your visit, the auditor needs to know how these things relate to the property and to each other. Which room is a window in? Are the shower and bath in the same room? Make sure the photographs submitted provide context as well as detail.
Evidence of windows being measured and inspected.
A new requirement of RdSAP 10 is that every window in the heat loss perimeter must be measured and inspected. It is not acceptable just to use industry standard sizes. Windows may be grouped into those with the same characteristics, but the details used must still be specific to the property being inspected. Where appropriate, dating evidence is also required for each window as outlined in Convention 3.12a.
No evidence of the building orientation used.
Another input factor in the new assessments is that the correct building orientation is used. This should be clearly evidenced and can be easily done by showing the property location on an aerial image alongside the orientation. This has always been a requirement of non-domestic assessments and free software is available that can provide this.
Inadequate detail on floor plans and measurements.
Floor plans do not need to be of marketing standard, but they need to clearly show the layout of the property and location of key features. Conventions 2.01, 2.02 and 2.18 apply to the measuring of properties. It must be explicitly stated whether measurements are taken internally or externally. All measurements, including windows, must be to 0.01 meter or better. Assessors must clearly show the measurements they have taken on the floor plan and should also supply clear calculations to show how they arrived at the inputs used in the assessment.
Inadequate site notes.
Site notes plug any gaps in the evidence obtained and also help to explain the assessor's thought process. Good site notes will also make it clear where you have encountered issues and why you have made the decisions you have made.
Failure to supply relevant documentary evidence.
Where suitable documentary evidence is available, this can help inform an assessment. However, evidence from the relevant documents must be supplied as part of the audit submission. This may be an electronic copy of the document itself or a clear photograph of it. Failure to provide sufficient evidence in your submission will result in the failure of a quality assurance audit. Whilst it may be grounds for an appeal if evidence is missed by an auditor, failing to supply it in your submission is not. The later supply of evidence is part of the corrective action for a failed audit and will not change the initial failure to a pass.
Reviewing the assessment data file is the next stage of the audit process. We will now go through an example section by section to discuss some of the common issues that are currently arising. Section 1.
The first section contains the address details. The search function should be used to select the correct address as shown. If the address is listed but requires correction, this can now be completed by overtyping the details in the input boxes. If the address does not exist, it can be created by filling in the address inputs and then selecting the Create New Address tick box as shown.
Section 2. The assessment details.
The most important thing to check here is that the assessment date entered matches the date the assessor visited the property. This must also match the date the photographs were taken.
Section 3. The property details.
This section doesn't usually cause many problems. However, some assessors are still misdefining bungalows and flats. Selecting the correct age bands and, where necessary, checking for evidence online to support this can also be an issue.
Section 4. Block details.
Whilst only required for flats, the new software has a habit of skipping over this section as the data file is completed. The selections made here are important and impact the options available later in the assessment process.
Section 5. Areas and dimensions.
By far, the most common mistake here is a failure to include the lengths of alternative and sheltered walls in the length of the exposed perimeter.
Section 6. Windows and roof lights.
There is a lot of new detail included in this section. Generally, the quickest way to input windows is to use the Quick Windows input. Multiple windows can be entered quickly line by line. However, when using this method, the draft proofing defaults to the assumed value for the type of glazing, which may not be correct. Assessors must check these values and, where necessary, amend them by editing the individual window. Any fixed shutters need to be included using a similar approach.
Section 7. Doors and draft proofing.
These details only regard doors in the heat loss perimeter of the building that are not being treated as windows, i.e., excluding highly glazed doors. It is acceptable to have no doors within a property, and this is common in blocks of flats with heated corridors.
Section 8. Wall constructions.
Convention 2.24 regarding party walls has resulted in some confusion. This convention only applies when stretcher bond brick or blockwork can be seen and there is no other evidence of the construction or insulation. Where you can see the wall is obviously not of cavity construction, the correct construction should be used. Where you cannot see any brick or blockwork, unable to determine should be used. Convention 2.22 requires that wall thicknesses be measured and they must be input into the assessment. If this is not possible, an explanation as to why should be provided in the site notes. Please note, the software currently only calculates if any sheltered wall is entered as part of the main building, contrary to the suggestion in Convention 2.03.
Section 9. Floor constructions.
This section is usually correctly completed in submitted data files, but some assessors have encountered issues obtaining the correct options. As mentioned earlier, this is usually due to the details in Section 4 being incorrect as shown in this example. There are also currently some examples of combinations of extensions within flats that will not calculate correctly. When these are encountered, technical support must be obtained from the accreditation scheme prior to lodgement. Lifespan SAP also has a very useful function allowing a single type of overhanging floor to be input within each building part. This avoids having to create additional extensions to correctly model many buildings.
Section 10. Roof constructions.
Again, in flats the options available depend upon the details entered in Section 4. The most common cause of audit failure here is forgetting to tick the box to confirm when a roof access is present. Even if the loft is not accessed but access is present, this must be ticked. Further details are supplied in Convention 3.04.
Section 11. Roof rooms and rooms in roofs.
This section does not apply to our example data file and deserves a CPD session entirely on its own. Many details regarding the new treatment of roof rooms and rooms in roofs are still being discussed and agreed. However, the one issue that is already coming up regularly is a failure to apply Convention 2.06. If any elements of the roof have known levels of insulation, the relevant detailed method must be used and all elements must be measured. Equally, the photographic evidence supplied should sufficiently show the room layout to confirm when access points are not present.
Section 12. Conservatories.
This section does not seem to be currently causing audit failures.
Section 13. Lighting.
In contrast, this section has been responsible for a very high number of audit failures. The biggest single issue is the double counting of bulbs. The number of incandescent bulbs entered must only include non-low energy bulbs like tungsten and halogen bulbs. During the site visit, the number of each type of bulb should be counted and recorded. The number of fluorescent and LED bulbs should then be entered into the assessment. Only where this is not possible should the total number of low energy bulbs be used instead. See Convention 7.01 for more detail.
Section 14. Ventilation and cooling systems.
Despite initial concerns, this section is being reasonably well completed. The two key points for consideration are: 1. The number of intermediate extract fans present should be counted, evidenced and input into the assessment wherever possible, and 2. The draft lobby tick box must be selected when appropriate.
Sections 15 and 16. Main heating systems.
Whilst the details of the heating system are usually completed correctly, care should be taken to ensure that the controls are correct and evidenced. However, many assessors seem to be struggling to identify utility meters correctly and are also entering details without suitable evidence to support it.
Section 17. Secondary heating.
The biggest single issue here is the application of Convention 5.03. Failure to select the correct fuel will result in incorrect descriptions on the EPC and therefore it will be defective and have to be replaced.
Section 18. Hot water, baths and showers.
The first issue arises when community heating systems are present. There are two different options here. The first is that the hot water comes from a community scheme providing hot water only, and the second is that hot water comes from the main system. The first does not require a hot water cylinder to be entered, whilst the latter does. A hot water cylinder should only be entered if the dwelling being assessed has its own. Many of the failures encountered so far have been the result of assessors moving on at this point and forgetting to enter any baths or showers. Care must be taken to visit the secondary tab and enter these details correctly before moving on.
Section 19. Utility meters and new technologies.
The correct identification of utility meters is proving very challenging for many assessors. Clear photographs should be taken and, if necessary, the model should be looked up to confirm if it is a smart meter or not. This information appears on the electronic version of the certificate, and so entering the wrong details will likely result in an audit failure on descriptive grounds. The Ofgem specification of UK smart electricity meters requires them all to be export capable even if this facility is not currently switched on, and so they should be recorded as such. In contrast, most analog systems are not capable of measuring grid exports and so are not export capable. The correct terrain must also be entered.
Section 20. Special features.
This section does not seem to be currently causing audit failures.
Section 21. Addenda to the EPC.
Missing a required addendum is a fast track to a defective EPC. Convention 3.14 requires Addendum 1 be selected when assessing blocks of flats. Addendum 8 must be selected when PV or a wind turbine is present on a property. Additionally, two new addendum are causing issues. Addendum 14 must be selected if a property is within a designated conservation area, and assessors will need to check this against local authority records. Addendum 15 must be selected after calculating the assessment if a recommendation for PV is included.
Section 22. Hard to treat cavity walls.
These three boxes must be completed for all assessments where uninsulated cavity walls are present. Conveniently, the map is provided to assist assessors in identifying high exposure areas. Finally, make sure that the project is saved, recalculated and then saved again to make sure the version of the file that gets lodged is correct. Before lodging the assessment, review the rating, recommendations and other information to ensure that they appear reasonable. If you find something that appears to be an error, recheck your data file, save any changes and recalculate it. Do not lodge certificates if they appear to have serious errors. The Energy Assessment Data (PDF) option in the Output Documents menu provides a downloadable summary of your inputs. It is wise to save this and supply it with your audit submission. Whilst it is not evidence in itself, it can help identify the cause of any unexpected issues that may arise. Please note, this file is not a substitute for site notes.
Thank you for your attention. Audit failures are damaging for the reputation of the industry and costly for both assessors and their accreditation schemes. Together, we can improve the quality of EPC assessments and reduce the number of quality assurance audit failures.